Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch. This is a European soccer edition going over the FA Cup. I guess we're gonna go Friday because I just realized I haven't made all my numbers for the rest of the round. So I might do a full FA Cup episode at some point. And then of course we're gonna do the Serie A upcoming weekend matches, which we do have one on Friday today, starting in just about an hour. So gonna go through very quickly the FA Cup briefly. My bad. But then we're gonna go into the Serie A after that. So gonna have an ultimate best bet as always. And we'll try to get this out because it's pretty much lineups are coming out very soon. Thank you if you're watching on YouTube. Please subscribe, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. Be huge for the search rankings. If you're not a member of BetOnline or SportsBetting.ag, check out the podcast description if you're looking at this on one of the streaming platforms, as there are free money offers being made at both those sites for first-time depositors. I'm not sure if it works for if you already have an account at either of those places, but if you are new to BetOnline, they are the official sponsor of La Liga, I believe, a betting partner or something like that, something of that nature. So let's get into the FA Cup since that's the first match coming up in just a few minutes, 45 minutes till Brentford take on Wolves. Brentford currently have pick'em with all the juice right now. Over-unders 2.25, juiced pretty heavily to over. We do have lineups for this one already out. I think the big misses or absentees are for Wolves, Craig Dawson, their center back, who's pretty much, I think, the chief of their defense, whether Kilman might be the captain sometimes. But Jose Sa starting at goalkeeper for Wolves is a little bit different. On the Brentford side, they are using a backup keeper in Thomas Strakosha, but I think Strakosha really wouldn't have signed for Brentford if he wasn't promised cup matches, because it seems very clear that Mark Flecken is the English Premier League goalkeeper. And I think we've seen Strakosha a couple times. He's made a couple decent performances, one really bad parry or save that went right into the goal, coming back to him essentially because he palmed it right to an attacker. I think it was against Manchester United when Brentford collapsed and gave up a 1-0 lead in stoppage time to lose 2-1 at Old Trafford. But there's a lot, I think, to talk about with Brentford. They've been really struggling offensively. Unfortunately, their defense has not been great. They're one of the smaller budgeted clubs in the Premier League, but they've been there for a while. So I think there's a lot of expectation for them that I'm just not necessarily sure they completely deserve at this point. It's possible that they will turn it around. Ivan Toney's coming back in 12 days. I think the 17th of January, the first time he's eligible. But that's not today. Brentford have not been scoring goals. And unfortunately, I just don't know necessarily what to think about their offense. It's really low XG attempts from set pieces. It looks like as I'm watching the live lines update at BetOnline, we might even get a quarter of a goal on Wolves, which was about what the price was, I think, a couple weeks ago when Wolves went into Brentford and won 4-1 and really kind of eviscerated a Brentford side. It doesn't look like the strongest team that Wolves could put out there, especially with Huang, who's gone to the Asia Cup. But there's still, I think, plenty of talent in Wolves. My bigger interest here is probably to under 2.25. And we might even get 2.5 before this kicks off based on where this money is moving. And it seems like Brentford's getting bet pretty heavily. I don't really see that their form certainly doesn't suggest that they win this match, nor do they win it comfortably. So unfortunately, with the spread, though, I usually give a quarter of a goal to a home team. We've seen Brentford with a really great crowd in the past, usually for Premier League matches. I think cup matches are a little bit of a different ball game. But cup matches usually play tight. I think I'm still leaning most interested into Wolves under 2.25. I feel like that last score is very unlikely to repeat itself. So that's my interest there. The next matchup, we have Fulham hosting Rotherham. Currently, Fulham a 2-goal favorite with a little bit more juice. Over-unders 3.25. Juice pretty heavily to under. And I think that's a representation of Fulham's defense. It's really is what kept them in the Premier League. And they've been trying to find ways to score goals. The nice part is Rotherham are clearly not a Premier League team. I'm actually going to look up where they are now. They are actually in 24th position in the championship. So that's not great. I think that is, bottom of the championship. So not great, to say the least. But they're going to go into Fulham, who have had plenty of goal scoring problems. They've had some peaks, certainly, with 5 goals in 2 straight matches. I think it was after a 3-goal output. So 13 in 3 matches, and probably have scored 13 goals the rest of the season. So it depends where you catch Fulham. I guess I would normally bet unders with them, or that's what I look to do with their side. And potentially as an underdog, but as a 2-goal favorite here, gigantic, especially considering what we've seen from them and their, like I said, the peaks and valleys offensively. In 26 matches, it looks like Rotherham have conceded 50 goals, so about 2 goals a match. They've scored less than one. I just don't think Rotherham have much of a chance here on the road in the cup match. There's possibilities that this is going to be very low scoring. I just feel like it's going to be hard to really expect that. So I think I'm probably going to sit this one out. I guess under 3.25 might be my lean in that match. And last but not least, for this Friday match, I'll get to Saturdays on the next podcast I do. So I'll do one tonight or tomorrow or something like that, probably tonight. But currently Tottenham a 1.5 goal favorite to Burnley with more of the juice. Over unders 3.5, juiced a little bit to over. Burnley is the side I'd want here. I'm as anyone who listens to Betting the Pitch, whether you're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anything like that, or on Twitter when I'm live, you'll know that I am not I'm not a favorites better in this sport by any means. It's certainly not amongst most sports that I play, though I have been adding to that a little bit lately. But ultimately, I'm also not a big Tottenham fan. I haven't really believed in who they are, who they want to be. I feel like at full strength, maybe the Ange ball will work. But they are far from it. And in this cup match, we don't have lineups yet, but I expect that they will not be playing their best. So that's going to be problematic for a Tottenham side to cover 1.5 goals, especially in a FA Cup match, which should play pretty tight. I think Burnley have kind of shown that they are a much less aggressive team. They basically won the championship by a million miles because they were much more athletic and aggressive than the rest of their opponents. Has not worked for them in the Premier League, and they've since then, I think they've throttled back significantly. But unfortunately, they're going to play a really high line against Tottenham. They're going to be stuck in their own end, and if they're going to try to be aggressive, then they're going to probably get hurt by it. But Tottenham missing Son is a big deal amongst their other absentees. I think I guess I lean to Burnley. Under 3.5 is also of interest to me, but unfortunately, Tottenham it's impossible for me to play unders with at this point. And so if you're playing under there, you're really hoping Burnley and their new pragmatic style will really take over. But I think they're going to try to score a bunch of goals. They want to win this match. Cup ties, no one wants to draw. You don't want extra time or penalties. So I would expect, I guess there might be a replay after seeing Everton draw yesterday. So, maybe scratch that. So maybe Burnley, I mean, if they could play a replay and get it at home, maybe that is what they're looking for. So I guess Burnley's going to be very defensive here, would be my expectation. But is that enough to keep this with 3 goals or less? I would say potentially, but ultimately I've kind of found that if both teams are really scary and Tottenham certainly terrifies me for playing under, I'm not really sure that there's enough there for them. But we'll wait to see lineups in about maybe 30 minutes, and then stay tuned to my Twitter, @the_Real_G Warner, and you will potentially find something coming out about that one around game time. So now I'll move to Italian Serie A, but I guess before I do that, I'll say under 2.25 on Brentford hosting Wolves is my best bet. Probably if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, you're probably not going to get this in time. But if you're live with me on Twitter, which is a good reason to hit that follow button, @the_Real_G Warner, or to really join my Patreon, become a patron, patreon.com/real_G Warner. It's where you get all my plays, all my write-ups, and you even get a notification every time I lock something in, so you make sure you get the same price that I do, which matters. So go check that out, patreon.com/real_G Warner. So for Italy, I'm gonna go through this whole card and then get the heck out of here. Unfortunately, it's my dog's last day with us, family dog. So I don't know what the heck's going to happen to me the rest of the night, but we are planning to still do a Need for Seeds college basketball podcast, as we are now recording on Fridays, Big East, Ben, and I. So we'll see what type of shape I'm in for that one, but I'm probably going to cry more than I have today, more than I have in years of awful bad beats for my little guy, Black Lab named Puck, Puck with a P, family podcast. But for Italy, we do have a match today. Bologna hosting Genoa. Currently Bologna a 0.5 goal favorite at home. All the juice on Genoa on the road. Over under is 2, and it's juiced very heavily to under, and I think it's for good reason. Unfortunately, Genoa, I mean, they're a good promoted side. Their offense is kind of slowed down a little bit, and they're going to have to go and find a way to score and break an incredible shutout streak, or at least a very low scoring defensive streak that Bologna have at home. This total of 2 seems very small, though we've seen that plenty in in La Liga, the Primera Liga, in Spain, or Primera División. But at this point, it's almost, I mean, I'm trying to play it as much as I can, I guess, because there's just so much difficulty in scoring goals for Bologna's opponents. We saw Atalanta, a Europa League group champion. They were group winner, I guess is probably a more appropriate way to say it. They closed an over-under of 2 here, and that's a much more dynamic, much different offense than what Genoa has. Yes, there's a lot of talent in the Genoa side, but they are newly promoted, far different. So I feel like there's still some value here on 2, even though it's a very low number for a total. I would not go lower than that, as I think 1 3/4 puts you at big time risk. It's not worth taking odds, as it looks like that's probably where it'll close. But if you also want to play under here, you want to grab that too before it kicks off. And that'll be my, I guess, recommendation for this one. We'll move next to Saturday morning. We have an early match. Inter Milan hosting Hellas Verona. Currently Milan, Inter Milan, excuse me, a 2-goal favorite at home with a little bit more juice. Over under is 3, just a little bit more to over. Inter have not been playing great for a while, but they keep getting results. And I mean, water is also wet. Seems to happen all the time for them. I think I guess my in general perspective of Inter is I love backing them as an underdog, but we rarely get that opportunity because of the best team in Italy. Verona on the other side are really poor. Defense is bad, offense is bad. That's why they almost got relegated last season and got saved by this newly instituted relegation playoff because they tied on points with Spezia, I believe, who I think they were worse off on goal differential, all that stuff. Kind of miraculous for them to stick around. I'm not really looking to back them on the road at Inter, to say the least, nor do I want to play an under with them because I'm just not a believer. So I will skip that one and move on to the next matchup, with is Frosinone, a recently promoted or newly promoted this season, and they're hosting Monza, who were promoted last year. Currently at Pick'em, a little bit more juice on Frosinone at home. Over unders 2.5, juiced all the way to over. I don't really see a ton of goals in this matchup, despite what feels like a high total, especially compared to that Genoa 2 very juiced the under today. I think from just at Frosinone, they've been very competitive in a lot of their matches this year, which is awesome for newly promoted that we're expected to go right back down to Serie B. Monza on the other side were a really aggressive attacking side last season, but then lost a lot of their attacking ability because their best players were bought by Inter and other places and returned on loan to the bigger clubs across Serie A. So that's problematic. I do feel like there's some value in going against that Monza offense because it seems like there's still some memories of and longing for the past of where Monza was a really good offense. So I'm most interested in that Monza under 2.5. And honestly, if Frosinone start to move towards getting the better odds or even getting odds at home, I think I'll be interested in looking into them as a pick 'em, but not just yet. Lecce then hosts Cagliari. Currently, Cagliari newly promoted Lecce, I think 2 seasons ago. Currently, Lecce, a quarter goal favorite at home, a little bit more juice. Over unders 2.25, juiced a little bit to under. Lecce have not been scoring a ton of goals. They definitely have an offense, but it's really been problematic for them for a while. They're pretty good at fighting back, but that was something they did early in the season, and I feel like they have not been doing that as of late. Cagliari on the other side, I don't know that I necessarily want to back them as only a quarter goal underdog. It's basically saying these two teams are equal. The late show has been awesome for Cagliari, but it's really been at home because they haven't been able to win matches or do much on the road this year. For that reason, I think under 2.25 is my biggest interest there. And then I'll move to the nightcap on Saturday, and then it's Sassuolo hosting Fiorentina. Currently, Sassuolo, a quarter goal underdog at home with more juice on the road to the Fiorentina side, slightly more. Over unders 2 3/4, just a little bit to under. And I don't really know necessarily what to do with this one. Sassuolo, I've not really liked for a while now. Fiorentina have been great at possessing the ball. They don't score a ton despite having possession ownership almost every match they play, unless they're playing the real big dogs in Serie A. But Sassuolo are not a great defense. I don't really know what to do with them at a quarter goal underdog at home. Of course, that interests me. But I feel like it's really scary to back them. And honestly, that under 2 3/4 feels high for this matchup, considering Fiorentina's inability to score. So I guess I'll put that on my list, but I just don't really know what to do with Sassuolo right now, though I guess if anything, I do like home dogs and I do like unders, especially when they're bigger than I was expecting. Now I'll move to Sunday, and I'll remind you, I'll close this up pretty quickly and give a best bet comparing the FA Cup for this Friday, January 5th, and also the Serie A weekend. Empoli currently a 3/4 goal underdog at home to Milan. All the juice on the Milan side, so it looks like this might climb to 1. Over unders 2 3/4. She's very heavily to under, and this feels like a good spot for Empoli to ride their home crowd. I think they win here probably Probably not. Could they steal a result? I think certainly. They're probably likely to lose, but I just don't feel like Empoli are in a good spot to really score a lot of goals. And I don't think Milan are in the place to do that. On the road, it's harder for them, of course, but they're just not the same offense they were. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries. Their defense has been absolutely strapped for players. I think even recalling Matteo Gabbia off of a loan at Villarreal in La Liga, despite Stefano Pioli thinking that they didn't need him coming into the season. My biggest interest here is in a low-scoring match. I think that Empoli at home will have a lot more energy to defend, and that's what they'll try to do against Milan, who really haven't showed a lot. Rafael Leao has been nowhere near the dominant force that he was last season. We'll move next to Torino hosting Napoli. Currently, Torino a pick'em, but all the juice is on the Napoli side, and I'm interested in that home dog. Over-under is 2.25, and it's used pretty heavily to under, which is a bit surprising, though Torino are going to try to possess the ball and keep Napoli away from their net as much as possible. I don't know that there's enough for me to make that an ultimate or a possibility of an option for my ultimate best bet, because I think Torino might close a quarter goal underdog here. It might be expensive, but I'm certainly waiting to hear that out. And I don't know that I necessarily want to play an under 2.25 with Napoli unless there's some suspensions. I guess Osimhen's probably gone, which does impair their offense quite a bit. So I might as well put Torino under 2.25 on that list. But I think I'm clearly more interested in the Torino side here because they're going to possess the ball. They're going to make it hard on Napoli to score. And I think Torino are going to do a lot to potentially show that Napoli are pretty weak based on their lineup and what's left them for AFCON. Udinese then host Lazio. Currently, Udinese a quarter goal underdog at home with a little bit more juice. Over-unders 2.25, juiced a little bit to under, or just a bit to under. Lazio have not been scoring goals, but that changed a little bit for them lately. Udinese have been taking leads. They finally were I think their last side in Serie A to score a goal in the first 30 minutes of a match, but they've been really struggling to hold on. And that's put a ton of pressure on their defense. Pretty low total, you could say, but I downgrade Lazio's offense really anywhere, but especially away from home. And I don't really trust Udinese to do much offensively besides find some set piece goals from their giant striker. So I'll go under 2.25 is my biggest interest in that one. Salernitana then hosts Juventus. Currently, Salernitana a 1.25 goal underdog at home in Salerno. A little bit more juice on their side. Over-under is 2.5 and is actually split juice both ways, -110. So not a lot of, I guess, opinions yet on that total. It does feel a little bit high for Juve, especially because they seem to take a 1-goal lead and kill matches. It hasn't always gone that way or gone according to plan, but I think it happens more often than not. And Salernitana, I just don't really trust them to score much, especially against a really tough Juventus defense, especially if they do take that lead and go into protect your net type of mode. So I like under 2.5 as my best bet in that matchup. And it looks like the last match on our list and the last one for today, brief podcast, my bad, but I need to make my FA Cup lines rather than doing it live on the fly. Roma currently a quarter goal favorite right now to Atalanta. All the juices on the Atalanta road underdog. Over-under is 2.25, just a little bit to over. Roma have not been they're so hard to predict. Jose Mourinho, you'd think, would make a pretty easy candidate to know exactly what's going to happen in his matches, but I just haven't really felt that way for a while. I think from an Atalanta point of view, their offense has not been great, but they've been pretty solid. They've been much better at home than on the road, which you would expect. But this price is pretty... Roma got a lot of respect at Juventus a couple weekends ago, or maybe last weekend. It all runs together over this holiday time. But Atalanta, I think, can go in there and cause some problems. It's very expensive to back them right now, though, -124 at BetOnline. So we might see this fall to pick them. I wouldn't be shocked by that, though. That would make me want to back Roma because I think they play really well at home and have that huge home crowd behind them. I'm not sure there's much for me to do with the side here. And I got to say the totals, they're a lot lower for Atalanta this season. But I think for good reason. On the road, they're not as strong. I just still think Atalanta, their goal is outscore you. That's what they want to do. Roma's defense has been good, but Dybala and Lukaku front line are terrifying for any defense. So I'm not really sure there's much for me to do with this last one on the list. So it's probably not even worth it for me to consider it for a potential ultimate best bet, which we're about to reach that portion of the show. Thank you for tuning in. It's a very, very brief episode, but welcome to, I guess, trying to do this on the fly as some matches are starting. Thank you for everyone that's with me live. I don't see any comments, but I don't know if there's a way necessarily to do that. I think you got to do it through StreamYard, which I don't expect anyone to have an account there unless you're actually recording like I am. But let me know if you want some tips or how to use it, because it's been pretty great for me, and it's awesome for getting live streams going directly onto Twitter. It's really, I've struggled on Twitter. It's almost impossible, it seems, and trying to get it from other platforms directly broadcast on Twitter seems very difficult as well. So I guess I'll run through a couple things before I get to ultimate best bet. Thank you to all the supporters into 2024, as we're still trying to grow this thing as much as possible. You'd help me a ton if you could leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you're on YouTube, you could hit subscribe. That would be great. And you'll see all my stuff that gets posted as soon as it does. Because unfortunately, some of the group calls that I do, or the podcast with a co-host, I'm unable to stream live. So you know exactly when they're recorded and get up there. We've been super hot in the NFL, Andrew Schnicker and I, 7-1 in our last 4 podcast episodes. My pregame.com podcast with AJ Hoffman, we both won our best bets last episode, so we're 2-0 heading to this one. I think things are starting to align a little bit, hopefully into a strong 2024. And of course, we have the Need for Seeds college basketball podcast with my good friend Big East Ben. That's coming up here on Friday, today, late night, potentially for some of you. So stay tuned for that. And I guess that's probably the plugs I need to do. As I mentioned, if you're not a member at SportsBetting.ag or at Bet Online, check out the promo codes below in the podcast description, wherever you get your podcasts, as you can get some free money, 50% at Bet Online, and 100%. They basically match your deposit up to $500 at sportsbetting.ag. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then, of course, if you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out. Patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. The best spot to get everything I'm doing the night before, and then as I'm doing it the day of. And that would be the best place to do it. Patreon.com/thereal_G Warner. So it is now time for the ultimate best bet portion of the show. And let me just make sure I have this all aligned, because I did not copy this over directly. Let's do it. This is the real_G Warner on, and this is betting the pitch on your favorite podcast network. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify, I really appreciate your support. And of course, if you're not a patron yet, check out patreon.com/the_Real_G Warner. Best spot to get all my stuff, patreon.com/the_Real_G Warner. So for my best bet from the FA Cup in England on this Friday, and I expect to do another podcast on Saturday, I guess, or maybe even Friday night, Wolverhampton under 2.25 goals is my best bet in the FA Cup. That's starting in about 30 minutes. So you might want to get on that if you're not there yet. As for Udinese, that'll be my best bet in Serie A this weekend. Under 2.25 is my best bet there. I just don't think Udinese are a team that I expect to score goals. Same sort of thing for Lazio, and that'll make that my ultimate best bet. Weird roundabout way to get into it. But yeah, I just 2 under teams for me, Udinese and Lazio on a great under streak, and on the road as a bigger club, less likely to score. So grab Udinese under 2.25 in Serie A for my best bet. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in for 23 minutes. I appreciate all the support as always. If you want anything, or you have any questions, or want me to read something on there, go leave a 5-star review, and that'd be huge. If not, we'll talk to you all very soon, and let's win some money. All right.